Okay, so the wife's Mazda Tribute refused to start, fortunately, in our driveway. It didn't seem to be the starter relay, which is here. Could probably test that by swapping with other relays. They all look identical if you had to. But the starter was spinning, just not engaging, not turning the motor over. So I had to take the starter out, which is a bit of a performance on this thing. It's down in the back there, well hidden, even from underneath. And it's a bit of a performance. The manual just says remove the 3 starter mounting bolts, that's step 2. Remove the drive shaft support bracket, we'll come to that in a minute. And then, disconnect the cable from the starter and remove the starter, just like that. Remove the starter mounting bolts. I can't even see the starter, it's down there somewhere. Fortunately I did the clutch a year ago, so I know the mounting bolts go in from this side. They're underneath all this lot. They're also slightly different head size from the bell housing to engine block bolts, which helps to tell which is which when you're groping around in this mess. So to make access easier, first take off a lot of fairly easy things to take off. The battery, obviously. Battery tray, which is just 4 bolts in the bottom of it, lifts out. Like that. This air inlet stuff. So first, all this is just sitting here for illustrative purposes. The throttle cable, and disconnect that nut there, bolt there. That just flops out of the way. I'll stick the nut back in the bolt back in the hole so I don't lose it. And this comes off here, there's a clamp there, there's a clamp there, there's a hose there, off that comes. This comes off. That. Oh. Air cleaner, filter element, yeah. And one bolt and this comes out. Pushes into rubber bands there, you just pull very hard. And out it comes. Next thing is to jack the car up securely. I use 2 jacks and 2 jack stands because it'll be up for a while and I don't want to end up squished under it. Also took the wheel off for access, and also the left hand splash guard, which is a lot of little nuts and bolts that comes off quite easily. Now, according to Haynes' manual, the right hand drive shaft support bracket, which is mounted on the back of the block in there, has to come off to let the starter motor be manoeuvred out of the way. So this is the bracket. Those two nuts, which hold the drive shaft bearing, can be reached from here with a long extension. "12mm socket, I don't know if you can read that, and it goes in like that. And what it actually goes on to is those nuts. They come off. Then you crawl underneath the car and reach up from below and undo the 3 13mm bolts, mostly by feel. It's not actually too difficult to locate them. Then we have the 3 starter motor bolts, which are in here. Just see, they're very hard to even see. Now the starter's been removed at this stage, so you'll just see the bolt holes. There's one down there. There's one just down to the left, even harder to see. Should be lit up. And the third one is further down. So, almost easier to find by feel. So it may help to know that the starter motor bolts are 14mm heads, also cadmium plated or yellow. It helps to have an assortment of spanos and socket extensions. The regular bell housing to engine block bolts are 13mm heads, so that's how you can tell if you've put your socket on the right one or not. And also, if you fish a bolt out and it's not that colour, it's silver, probably the wrong bolt. So now, having got the starter loose and down in there, you just have to undo the cables and withdraw the starter. It's not that easy because the cables are on top of it. You can't reach them, you can't pull it down very far because the cables won't let you. That is the nut you have to undo, and the other connection is just a push-on connection here, but of course it's in the front here, so you can't reach it easily either. I should add that the terminal just pulls off that. It isn't one of those diabolical connectors where you have to push some hidden catch to get it off. It's just a straight push-on, pull-off, mercifully. So what I found easiest to allow the starter a bit of movement or accessibility was to undo the main wiring loom. That is from the battery, disconnected, to the control box, down here, through to the starter and up to the alternator. This end is quite quick and easy actually. Undo the earth connection there. take off the two connections in the control box, and for the record, red is the front one, yellow is the rear one. Come round here and unbolt the connection from the back of the alternator. Bit hard to reach, but it's down there. And then also this cable is held on with a number of clips, one in there, one here, and one here. The clips have little plastic tags you can lift up and pull like that, it slides off. Little plastic tags that fit in those slots. So we've done it there, done it to the one under there, done it to this one on this cable just to make things a bit easier, done it with some difficulty to the one down there, and finally just under the gear change cable, if you can see that screw hole, there is an earth connection off this cable that we're trying to free. An earth connection bolts down on that. And to undo that earth connection there, I use a slim quarter drive 10mm socket. Which will just go past, and there's the bolt hole that we're trying to see. And there's the earth connection. I tied it up with a bit of wire to the main cable just to keep it out of the way. So now we've got the starter out. What also came out and fell on the ground was this. Don't know if that's focusing. From the look of the grooves worn in it, it may have been in there and getting ground by the pinion when it tried to fire. That's the only thing that would produce grooves of that radius. After much head scratching about where the hell this came from, I thought, bingo! I replaced the clutch about a year ago. Here's the old clutch. There are 6 bolt holes and 3 dowel holes. These dowels fit into the flywheel and the clutch locates on them, and it fits. So that's where it came from. Okay. Back in she goes, and a lot faster we hope than it came out. Ideally needs 2 people, one to shove the starter motor up from underneath, the other one to poke a bolt in from here to locate it. And I'm only one person. So, in order to help line the starter up, I made a dowel which will screw into the front of it. So, then once the starter is in place, bolted up on its flange, I can remove that with a screwdriver through the mounting hole and screw the 3rd bolt into place. To make the dowel I just used a bolt, cut the head off it. Should be M10 fine, but I don't have one of those, so I just used a 3/8 UNC, which screws in far enough to do the job. Okay, so I cut the head off the bolt and cut a slot in it using a very thin cut-off wheel. Okay, so next we crawl underneath and fit two connections to the back of the starter, the main cable which bolts on and the starter solenoid cable which pushes on. I won't even try to show it from here, it's all done by feel. Before finally fitting the starter into place, when it's halfway up the back of the engine, fit the main starter cable and the push-on solenoid cable. It's extremely fiddly to do down there, but once the starter is actually in place, the solenoid tucks up underneath the inlet manifold and these become damn near impossible to reach. Guess how I know. Okay, that seems to have got it. It's poked in the hole, so all I've got to do now is shove a couple of bolts in from this side and hope they grip. So that's one of them getting done up. I'll use a bigger ratchet to finish it off and torque it up properly. Then this one. And then we'll take a dummy dowel out, just unscrew it with a screwdriver. And there it is. So that can go in our box of handy gadgets for use on some future occasion. Hopefully never. And finally the middle one. Yeah, in there somewhere. Okay, connect up the main cable on the alternator there. Pull it through and plug it in on these clips. Connect up the earth down here. Connect up this earth here. Connect up on the control box there. Now we've got the drive shaft bracket to go back on from back on the motor from underneath. So then you refit the air inlet box, bolts on there, the air filter inside, the air filter box, the air inlet pipe with a clamp there and there, plug that in on there. The throttle cable, bolts on here, the battery tray and the battery. And so now all fixed, it works. Just had to reprogram the engine computer once the battery was back in, which is just a matter of letting it idle for a couple of minutes to warm up and then driving it for 10 miles when you first start it. If anyone's obsessing about continuity and how this appears and disappears, I had to do a number of pickup shots later on This starter I ordered, but due to shipping delays over Christmas and so on, I'd actually fixed the other starter and put it back in before this one arrived, so this is now a spare. So now it's working again, just like a new one, and I can get back to serious business. The next 2 minutes is not normally part of a starter repair procedure. It's because a clutch dowel came loose. You can actually reach the clutch bolts to check them through the clutch release lever opening in the side of the bell housing down here. So the clutch release lever, or the clutch lever release push rod, just pushes back like that and then just flops out the way. So now we can get the cover here off. So then this cover pulls off to give access or a good view of the clutch. So, having peeled that open, you can see a surprising amount of clutch through there. Through the gap. And you can even get a socket on the clutch bolts, 10mm. It's an extremely snug fit, and the bolts has to be lined up very precisely by turning the flywheel, and it's on. And now I can put a ratchet on it, or even a torque wrench, and just check that it's done up tight. I'm going to take this out extremely carefully so as not to knock the socket off and drop it down the hole. Yes. Yeah, I think you can just see the bolt head just there in the beam of the torch. Of course, you can turn the crankshaft to line the clutch bolts up with the hole quite easily with this on the front crankshaft bolt. So anyway, as it turned out, all 6 clutch bolts were tight. So, and torqued up. So, and I did find one dowel hole from the missing little dowel. So I'm just leaving it because the bolts are tight. She should be okay.